go.
Hey, my name is Wes with Integrity ISR, and today we're having an ISR conversation with our very own Senior Vice President of Global Strategy and ISR subject matter expert, Chad Hartman. Chad, how are you doing today?
How are you doing, Wes?
Doing good, man. It's so good to have you. And today we're having a discussion all around Operation Epic Fury. There's been a lot happening, and we want to break it down. Want to talk about things that have happened since the beginning of the conflict, what some people might be missing, and why it matters. So as we hop into this, Chad, I want to start here. What have you been seeing on the ISR side that maybe you want to share with us today?
I think what's truly most impressive that I see is just the scope and scale and the speed over these last few weeks. I mean, if you look at the extensive operations that have taken place for nearly 40 days going on, I mean, you're looking at a country that is pretty fascinating in the sense that we haven't dealt with a large scale like this in quite some time. Even Iraq and Afghanistan were a little bit smaller in scale as they dealt with it. And when you look at Iran, just the coastal area alone of Iran, and then looking at the depth into Tehran and across the country, I mean, you're talking about some serious geography here, some serious scale, and they've had decades of build up, a lot of military related targets that we've actually addressed over those 40 days. So I think that's something that when you look back at this operation, and we're still in the middle of it, it's hard to sense that. But I think history will look at this and go, man, what a phenomenal contribution by the intelligence apparatus in of itself across the board, not just the ISR, doing the daily operations, but the intelligence work, the analysis, the targeting, all that deliberate work that took place for years and months ahead of time to be able to come up with the best plan possible to be able to go in. And then I think what really stands out, you had a lot of, obviously, as you do with all operations, a lot of adaptation. So you can have the best laid plan and you come in, and this one was pretty sophisticated and pretty good. But he had to do a lot of agility, a lot of adaptation throughout the campaign to be able to adjust fires, to be able to adjust to the situation. And I think we demonstrated that from an intelligence standpoint, we have mastered both of those deliberate planning aspects, but also the all too important dynamic operations in today's battlefield.
One of the other developments in this conflict was in the past few days, one of the fighter jets was shot down, and we had a missing pilot and a missing WSO, weapon systems operator. What in that kind of scenario, what starts to happen behind the veil of trying to figure out where they're located, how to get them out, and how to rescue them, which we thankfully did? What goes on there?
First and foremost, you have incredibly trained forces that do this. And there's a lot of intense, people don't appreciate the amount of work that goes behind these kind of situations to make it look easy at first glance, and they never are. You train the way you fight. And I think you see this both on the operator side, the special forces side, and then the intelligence apparatus. So I think what is important on this, when you have those kind of situations, they get declared, it automatically puts an alert out to everybody, and everybody rallies around the problem. It becomes a very problem-centric focus, right? We have a downed-aircrew. We have a situation we got to develop. We have a lot of good practice ahead of time to understand who's going to be lead, who's coordinating, who's got what responsibility, who supports, how you convey that information. That's all too important, because otherwise what happens is you get the 5-year-old soccer where everybody wants to help and jump and just scrambles and goes after it with no, coordinated and synchronized effort. So we've done a really good job over the years of planning those type of operations, practicing them, so we know exactly what to do when they do happen. In this case, when you start looking at the ISR and the intelligence, you're going to get a small armada of capabilities that are zeroed in and focused. And obviously, they're looking for the down-aircrew. That's one of the biggest things they're focused on. But they don't just do tunnel vision and zero in. They're also going to make sure they maintain awareness of the situation around that designated area. Where are the other enemy forces? What are they doing? Are they reacting? Are they marshaling? Are they coming up? Are they forming? Are they generating, trying to generate sorties with whatever air force they had left to come in and actually kind of do their own engagement? So it's doing that coordinated fashion where you designate, all right, who's got eyes on, who's actually looking in a particular area, who's scanning the immediate vicinity, who's scanning a little bit deeper on all two important targets. And then you still got a conflict going on that you got to maintain some presence and awareness. Even if you do a ceasefire on kinetic operations, you still have to maintain important awareness throughout the entire battle space. So it's an extreme, complicated, coordinated effort. The thing that I think really is all too important, and you saw this demonstrated, you won't hear about it, but it's really is a factor of taking multiple sources of intelligence across multiple domains. And in this case, probably across not just the Department of Defense, but the entire intelligence community apparatus, all synchronized together to be able to do this. So that, I think that was the success here. You heard some press reports. You've seen some of the statements come out. The president acknowledged this, that the actual fix, if you will, to do the positive identification of the second air crew, the WISO in this case, was actually by the CIA and a CIA asset in direct coordination with DOD. That is something that is well habitual relationship that takes place in time of need. And that's where you get to see the power of each institution coming together to be able to support each other.
Early in the war, we saw precision strikes targeting senior leadership, including reports that Iran's supreme leader was killed in the opening phase. To hit a target of leadership at that level, what has to be true from an ISR standpoint before a strike like that is even authorized?
So you're definitely going to have conditions-based. That's a conditions-based engagement scenario. So you set up a very coordinated, very complex, synchronized plan to be able to go with many different facets of both ISR and fires, all in great synchronization there. But I think what you do is it's meeting certain conditions. And in this case, as reported, there was high suspicion they were going to be able to synchronize this meeting, have it take place, catch an element of surprise, but they still had to have triggers. They had to have the conditions be met through certain triggers. And once they did, that set in motion the plan that was put in place. I think in the case of what we saw in the opening fires of the conflict that we had here for the Iranian situation, is that they had quite an impressive plan, and it was a very quick trigger that once that happened, things flowed very rapidly thereafter, and the force had been postured ready to react. And I think it went very well as far as a U.S. standpoint on being able to meet the conditions of that operation.
In the first 12 hours of the conflict, there were reports of almost 900 coordinated strikes across missile sites, air defenses, and key infrastructure. When you see that scale of synchronized strikes, is that real-time ISR driving decisions, or are we seeing years of intelligence work being executed all at once?
Yeah, it's both. I mean, frankly, it's both. I think particularly the opening hours of a campaign is going to be a culmination of years of intelligence and targeting development that goes into play and operational planning. That is what you're seeing. But we do a couple of things. We put a plan together that allows us the ability to adjust fires so that we have that agility built in purposely into the plan. We do that by making sure we don't have single points of failure in there, and then we have the ability to cross-cue and cross-communicate amongst the force that's employed. So we purposely and deliberately plan for dynamic operations. That's the key that comes in there. I think also, as you see, all that element that was put in place ahead of time actually played out quite extensively as we expected. The dynamic aspect of that is you're always going to have forces, and particularly in today's operation, a lot of these forces are mobile. So you try to catch them as much as you can by surprise so that they're sitting ducks, if you will, and they're not in a mobile state, and so that you can pick them off before they become harder to find. But you also have built into their kind of 100 killer packages that are designed to go within a certain particular area we know an asset is, to be able to find that assets because it has or has not moved, and to be able to quickly commence a fix and a target and engagement sequence upon that target.
We've talked about synchronization and coordination a lot in our past conversations. Well, on this operation, we saw a large coordinated a set of strike packages, dozens, if not over 100 aircraft operating in sync across the battle space. How dependent is that level of coordination on ISR? And what breaks if your ISR picture isn't accurate or up to date?
Two things. It wasn't just air, right? I mean, that's the part. The air is definitely taking center stage in all this. But there were substantial maritime naval fires involved. There was significant ground fires, some of the first time ever that we've been developing with HIMARS and some of these other long-range fire capabilities out of the ground forces. And then SOF obviously had a key role throughout. But I think what is different today, and it's just not a play on words, where we were really good at coordinating in the past, today we've become really good at synchronizing. And those are two different things. Coordinating is where you're going to take operations and you're going to deconflict and you're going to say, here's my main effort, here's what I'm doing, here's what you're going to do. I may support you a little bit, I'll coordinate back and forth. Synchronizing is where I'm mutually supporting each other, where I'm coming in and taking all different effects to come together in a mass and synchronize those effects, sometimes reinforcing each other and how they do things. That's another level of coordination that's far more complicated, but as we see in this campaign, far more productive if you do it.
Shortly after, Iran responded with missile and drone attacks targeting Israel, U.S. bases, and regional positions. When those launches begin, what are the ISR professionals actually doing in real time, those first few minutes? Like, what problems are being solved? What's being worked through?
There's a lot that goes into that. I think there's obviously an awareness of, hey, we have a firing. Are we tracking that missile? Where is it? You're trying to basically get a predictive kill envelope for your engagement, your air defense systems, your air and missile defense systems that are integrated, to be able to get a calculated point for engagement and kinetic, kill for that kind of situation. So there's a lot of different ISR that comes together and helps that in a very rapid fashion. The other side of that coin that's also happened simultaneously is some of these things are hard to find until they fire. And so you have these launchers that are really kind of a more important asset you want to take out more than the missile inventory itself, because there's always a handful of launchers that can actually launch multiple missiles. So once that's identified, we're also got a separate engagement scenario going with ISR that's actually identifying where that took place now that's been highlighted because of the missile firing, fixing it, tracking it, and engaging it so that it can fire no more. So there's a complex array really taking place about the defensive role of the incoming missile and doing our integrated air missile defense, the support of ISR to support a successful, engagement of that system as it comes in, but also an offensive element to go after some of those launchers that transpired so that we can quickly negate their ability to continue operation.
As the conflict expanded, attention quickly was drawn to the Strait of Hormuz and broader regional impacts for global energy and shipping if there was anything affected there. How does ISR shift practically when the fight moves from a battlefield to something like the Strait that globally impacts systems, energy, shipping, etc.?
I'm not too sure there was a massive shift. I think it was probably continuing from day one. It was just the ability, you had higher priority target sets from the leadership, from the WMD program remnants of, to surface missiles, to the Shahed drones. That was a resource constraining, right? So you probably had some concentration and focus upon those other target sets with not a lot left over to be able to address the coastal missile defense, the mining, the naval aspect. You did see a shift. It wasn't so much a shift in the ISR as a shift in focus and concentration of all assets to include fires, as that you started to negate those higher priorities at the initial stages and then be able to come in and address that. Many people will argue, hey, you should have affected the Strait of Hormuz sooner. That history, when you look at it from that standpoint, is at what point do you make a determination to say that's a higher priority than maybe a weapons of mass destruction aspect or a core command and control leadership? So I think that's one of those trade spaces. As incredible as we are, we still have some finite resources that we can't hit everything at once all the time. I think it was less of a shift and more of an effective campaign to be able to negate them. The other aspect that it comes to mind on this is that, they did, in my opinion, looking at what transpired, an amazing job of affecting the real core capabilities that Iran had, from their naval assets, from the coastal defense cruise missiles, to truly affect shipping along the Strait of Hormuz. They hit that hard, they hit it pretty quick, and they negated it pretty quick. But you're never going to do a 100% solution. It's just too easy to have these asymmetric approaches where you can have anybody in a fishing vessel and a larger fishing vessel that can actually transport a covert mine put out there. And just the perception, a single mine out there can have an oversized strategic impact and effect. That's something from a military standpoint. You can hit 99% and still have 1% that has some impact, right? And I think we saw some of that play out. I think it was like, there was probably a very diminished threat from the Strait of Hormuz, but it wasn't enough yet to be able to justify commerce with those valuable tankers and the insurance that goes with them to actually begin transit. So I think that is something that played out from a military standpoint. It went quite well, less of a shift in my mind, more of just the showing the ability to take care of your priorities in that prioritized fashion, be able to get through them probably faster than we ever have in history.
We saw a huge escalation, claims of ending civilizations, but also a direct offer to a ceasefire. And so with that decision where there was mere hours for Iran and America to come to a conclusion of a ceasefire, what were the ISR processes that had to verify those things of promise on the back end so that we could actually have a ceasefire?
You probably saw from an ISR standpoint, they were continuing with the plan. They were ready to justify and go to the ceasefire stage of monitoring as necessary. And they probably had a separate element planning those operations out, having things ready to go as required by the administration, as required by the military leadership. But they were probably still, people don't realize, still continuing the plan. Right after the rescue, they still had to re-engage and go back to the target deck and with what they were focused on for those last couple of days of being able to achieve those objectives against those military targets. So there was still a lot going on with that. There were probably continuing operations. I mean, if you look what transpired within less than a week time frame, you had deliberate operations ramping up, hitting further down the priority schema of the military objectives that were still left open to be able to close those effects as necessary. You get a diversion with a major rescue operation that commenced over a 2 to 3 day period, looking at it entirely. And then you go right back into those operations again, and then into a ceasefire monitoring. I think the lesson learned out of that is incredible agility. And while we get to have peace and we get to pull forces back from engagement, which is awesome, the ISR side of this never stops, right? They never get any rest for the weary because their job is more important than ever as they continue to be able to monitor this situation.
It seems like the why behind a ceasefire would be because the Strait of Hormuz gets opened back up. Is that the only reason behind a ceasefire, or what would be the deciding factor by choosing to offer a ceasefire for a 2-week period?
I don't know. There's apparently a framework of 10 key points that were negotiated with Pakistan. We're not aware, at least I'm not aware yet, exactly what those are. But I'll tell you, it cannot just be the Strait of Hormuz, obviously, right? We're looking at many different facets that came into this. First and foremost was the rationale that was declared by the administration that it was to be able to cease the nuclear activity, the development of enrichment of the uranium, looking at that program, making sure that whatever has been enriched to 60% is actually, there's probably going to be a framework, sub-framework to this to be able to get that identified, to be able to get it turned over from Iran to either the United States or an international actor there. So I think there's many facets in there as well. There's going to be the missile firings that we're seeing and the Shahed drone firings that have been taking place. I think that's an important piece of this, that those are going to cease operations along with, allowing transit of the regular commerce through the Strait of Hormuz. I think one of the challenges you'll find, and it has been identified, I saw it at the press conference this morning, is that we have really hit their command and control network hard. And so sometimes getting that coordinated message out from the central command to their fielded tactical forces is going to take time. So you're probably going to see spurious fires, last night and into today, just because they haven't had the command and control network to be able to get the orders out to all the forces to cease and desist. So I think there's a little bit of cushion there that we're watching and making sure, that expect it's not a zero-sum game, but we expect would quickly come to a stop on all fires, and then we'd be able to implement those different facets. Again, we don't know what they are, but I think there's those key ingredients I just talked about are going to definitely be central to whatever ceasefire plan that is in place now.
Looking forward to the next 2 weeks with the ceasefire in the Iran war, what's going on in the ISR?
Yeah, so a lot of this is, right, you're going to have designated indicators, if you will, that you're actually looking for. So you have objectives in this phase. We're going to try to maintain awareness, see what Iran is truthfully doing and reacting. Is there anything nefarious taking place? Are they meeting the conditions as stated? And we don't have all those conditions for us here in the public, but they probably are well known and at least a framework agreed upon now. So they're zeroing in on that, and they're basically monitoring. So they're probably monitoring those different situations, those different things that they're tied into, those indicators, if you will. And they're doing it on a wide scope, and they're looking across wide scope in terms of geography and function. So they're going to look across many different areas of Iran to be able to see what's going on. As far as function, they're going to look at different command and control apparatuses that are left, monitoring leadership, what's taking place, monitoring the forces themselves out there, particularly the Strait of Hormuz. You start seeing those coastal defense cruise missiles. You start seeing any of those naval mines or any capability left to be able to embark those mines and put them in there. They're going to keep a close awareness monitoring of that. And then they're obviously monitoring anything related with the nuclear program to be able to not just sense reactivation or attempts to be able to do that, but also, hey, this is kind of dust settled a little bit. Is there an effort to maybe squirrel away or hide some nefarious material? So there's a lot of competing demands going on this kind of situation. If anything, it's probably going to be almost as demanding or more demanding than the last few weeks of war have been, as now the onus is back on the intelligence to be able to monitor and see if we have a successful ceasefire over these next 2 weeks.
Closing question for you, Chad. When we step back and look at everything we've seen during this conflict so far, from cyber attacks to precision strikes, real-time targeting, and even the global impact with the Strait of Hormuz, what do you believe is the biggest thing that people still don't understand about ISR in modern conflict?
Yeah, I don't think, until you've lived it, I don't think you can understand it. Is just the sheer scale and complexity behind the scenes. We make it look easy. You get to see these nice films of these, air defense radars and these missiles being engaged and blowing up, and it looks cool, and we put that out. But to be able to do that at the scale of 900,000 targets a day that we're doing in a prioritized fashion with multiple assets across multiple phenomenologies of intelligence, across multiple domains, all coordinated and synchronized at that scale and speed and agility, that synchronization and that effort behind the scenes is just awe-inspiring. It's something we've gotten very, very good at over the last couple of decades, with a lot of combat operations, a lot of hard lessons learned. And then we've taken advantage of some technology to fix some of the errors we had in the past. I think you're seeing that play out.
Awesome. Well, Chad, I really appreciate your time and your insight. It's always great having conversations with you. I learn a whole lot. And if you're watching this and you want to go deeper, our company, Integrity ISR, supports government, military, and industry with both training and operational expertise. And then through ISR University, we offer education for individuals and entire workforces, whether that's through our existing course catalog or by building custom training tailored to your mission. We can even assess your current proficiencies and help map a path forward based on your goals. To learn more about both organizations, visit integrityisr.com or isruniversity.com. Thank you so much for watching, Chad. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Wes. It's always a pleasure.
And we look forward to our next conversation.